being stuck with that thing, continuing having the same problems, would be no fun. On the subject of buying something over 5 or 7 years, I have another question I was going to ask you, Bill. We hear a lot about it, again, with the recession. But what is the Fair Credit Reporting Act?
Okay. Fair Credit Reporting Act is federal legislation. It's a law that is enforced by the Federal Trade Commission. Essentially what the Fair Credit Reporting Act does is it's a law that protects consumers to make sure that the information in your credit report is accurate and kept private.
I see.
You know, credit is extremely valuable today.
Yeah.
There's so much of people's financial livelihood depends on their credit, access to it. The credit can affect where you live. It can even affect where you work in some cases. Not to mention the obvious, your ability to get a loan and what that loan costs you depends very much on your credit score.
So in the area of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, that's a protection we're enjoying under the Congress, United States of America. If you were to litigate something dealing with that, would you have to go to federal court? Federal district
Federal
court?
or state.
Or you can go either place?
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
And basically what the issue is in a case that's brought under the Fair Credit Reporting Act is if the creditor or the credit reporting agency, if they fail to rectify inaccurate information, incomplete or outdated information, that is in and of itself a violation of the Act. And that's when a consumer would have the ability to bring an action against the creditor or reporting agency.
Well, we certainly hear a lot about your credit score these days. And obviously, if you're talking about buying a car for excess of $20,000, most people can't shell out cash for that. So, yeah, it's pretty obvious. We need our credit. How does the Fair Credit Reporting Act protect Ohio consumers?
Well, again, if you can show that you've suffered damages as a result of inaccurate or outdated information in your credit report, you can bring an action, and if you're victorious, I guess the best thing is the report gets fixed.
I see.
Okay, but also you're entitled to any damages that you can show, plus an additional amount up to $1,000 for the violation. And what's also nice is under the law that your attorney fees and court costs are paid for as well.
It's very significant. Just like Consumer Sales Practice Act, if you win, your attorney's fees are paid. Same idea here.
Sure. Sure. And again, your credit report is restored, and any actual and punitive damages you're entitled to as well.
I can see where that type of inaccurate activity with the lightning speed of internet communication and email and everything else that we live under today could really do some damage to somebody's financial well-being. So here again, it's very helpful, and I'm sure our viewers know that. I got another question here for you. What is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act?
Yeah, the FDPCA.
Yeah.
Also federal legislation.
Okay.
Yes. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people in today's economy that are on the receiving end of debt collectors.
More so now, Bill, than we've seen in a while.
Sure. And what this act does is it basically prescribes a certain set of rules that those debt collectors must follow when trying to collect those debts. And it's basically set up to prohibit them from engaging in abusive practices in order to collect those debts. So it's a way for consumers to kind of keep them at bay.
So I think this is everything you've mentioned here is very germane to what's going on in the world today with unfortunately our economy as it is. But I know, I've heard, okay, I won't say I know, but if you have an attorney representing you and on a particular issue that has to do with the debt that's in question, can you tell the guy who calls on the phone, the debt collector, if you will, or the agent of the debt collector, I have an attorney, I'm not going to talk to you about this. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's regarding it's in litigation?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they should be contacting
So
counsel.
if you have a lawyer and you have retained counsel, you don't have to talk to these people. Do you have to talk to them under any circumstances? I mean, you get a telephone call on a debt that's out there. sometimes they're a little harassing, actually. What is the consumer? What's the best thing for a consumer to do under those circumstances?
Well, if it's involving a debt that you're being represented by counsel by, like a home foreclosure or something like
sure.
that,
That's
those
exactly
calls,
what we're talking about.
those calls should be referred to your attorney.
To your attorney.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, there's a number of other, debts. I mean, collectors have the right to contact you and to try to get information from you and to try to do what they can to collect the debt. But the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act deals with how they can do that.
Yeah, it's going to give them some parameters.
Yeah.
I know in their letters that they sent, I assume it comes from that law, they have to clearly represent to the reader of the letter, the person, that this is what I'm doing. They're not
That's right.
Approaching it from a moral thing. You ought to pay your bill. I'm doing this because you owe, and they have to be up front.
Yeah, the Act applies to debt collection agencies. It doesn't necessarily apply to the actual company collecting debts on their own behalf. But when that company goes out and hires an agency to do that for them, then the Act applies to the behavior of those agents. And some of the things that it prescribes are what you would expect. It says you're not allowed to use abusive language. In dealing with a debtor. You're not allowed to publicize the debt. You can't take an ad out and saying, John Smith owes us money. You're not allowed to make annoying or anonymous telephone calls. You're not allowed to misrepresent your identity as a debt collector. And you're not allowed to make up the consequences of what can happen if they don't make a payment. You're going to be put under arrest, or we're going to come take your dog, or whatever it might be.
Well, this is obviously a federal law. We would hope that people in this business, and most of them are, we'll sure obey the law. But if one were to violate that bill, is that actually a criminal activity? If you were using the abusive calls, there could be a federal prosecutor look into this?
Well, the remedy is much like the Fair Credit Reporting Act. If there are violations of it, you can bring suit under state or federal law, and you're entitled to damages. But what's most beneficial is you can stop the practices. You can stop those calls coming into you.
So that would be the remedy there, just by calling to somebody's attention. Well, Bill, this has been very interesting and very, very germane to what's going on in our world today and in our slow economy. I'd like to thank you for being our guest on Law Talk. To view this episode and others, go to the website, our website, at www.CZ-CLEP, or what we call CZ-CLEP.org. I am John Celebrezze, and I thank you for tuning in to Law Talk.
At CZ-CLEP, we're devoted to the education of today's legal issues. Fueled by the public's keen interest in our legal system and current events, CZ-CLEP is dedicated to the educational venues aimed at enhancing the understanding by all citizens.
For a complete listing of dates and times for this telecast, tune in to WCTV Channel 15 or log on to WadsworthCity.com and follow the links to WCTV.
I'm John Celebrezze. Please join me in getting a better understanding of the law.